Howdy y'all and welcome to this special spring outlook video. Just a disclaimer here before we get into the official forecast. We cannot predict the future, so please take this forecast with a grain of salt, as anything over a week out is virtually impossible to forecast. Now before we get into the actual forecast, I decided to put together a couple fun facts for y'all. Do you know the word spring dates back to the 14th century, originating from springing time? And another fact is the Eiffel Tower can expand by up to 6 inches in warmer spring temperatures due to the iron expansion. I bet y'all probably did not know that. Now to determine what kind of weather we're going to be getting in on this spring, which goes from March all the way into the beginning parts of June, we'll have to determine whether or not we're going to be in a La Nina, El Nino, or even a neutral pattern. Now this winter we have been in a La Nina pattern, which has been a very significant snowy season, especially out here in the Midwest. But as we can see here on the right, coming out of La Nina, and it's looking like we're going to be heading into a neutral pattern as we head into spring. And as we head into the summer months, it's looking like we could head into a weak La Nina, especially as we head into fall and potentially into winter. Now, y'all may wonder, what does this even mean and how does it affect our weather? Well, El Nino means warmer waters, La Nina means colder waters, and neutral means basically neither. Here is Fox weather here, little known weather patterns during a INSO neutral pattern. And the last time we were in a INSO neutral pattern was back in 2020. That's the most recent time. So expect a spring weather pattern like we did back in 2020. When the world was pretty much shut down. And it says right here, impacts on spring weather. INSO neutral conditions are not known to produce busy spring severe weather seasons. Now, I know in the last video I did say something about Reed Timmer mentioning a strong severe weather season, which we will get into that here in a little bit. But basically, this breaks down what INSO neutral is, which means that we're going to be coming in on what could be a normal spring for much of the country, essentially. And here is how the INSO neutral will impact the lower 48. Now, I'm not going to bore y'all with the details on every single tidbit of this, which this is the Grok AI is pretty helpful when it comes to looking at weather data and weather stats. But basically, most of the US will have warmer than average temperatures in spring, except for the far northwest, which may be cooler. Drier conditions are expected in the southwest, southern Rockies, and in the southern plains. And I'll scroll down here, we can see the regions here. Y'all can pause the video anytime to read this, but basically what y'all saw in the thumbnail is basically what I'm expecting. So let's go ahead and get into the temperature anomalies and precipitation anomalies. I'll show you all the Climate Prediction Center of what they think, and I'll give my thoughts on how this spring will turn out. And to do this, we're going to have to look at the Euro seasonal. This takes us all the way out into June. Now keep in mind that anything every week is virtually impossible to forecast, so please take this with a grain of salt. And we're taking a look at the temperatures first. You can see as we head into March, it's looking like much of the country's heading into an above average temperature pattern, except for the northwest and northeast. Eastern, a little bit of the Midwest and eastern part of the country is dealing with a little bit of a below average temperature pattern, while the rest of the country is looking to be warm. And of course, May, it's looking like much of the country is going to start to warm up drastically. It's looking like we're pretty spot on with that. And as we take a look at the seasonal temperature outlook here in the Climate Prediction Center, of course, the Northwest is going to be below average. Equal chances mean either below or above average, and it's looking like the rest of the country, from California up into the Northeast, looking like you're all going to be above average. Now, as far as precipitation goes, we can see March going to be pretty soggy up here in the Northwest. It's going to be wet and cool up there as we head into March and April, while the southwest and central part of the country is going to be drier than normal. Eastern part of the country is going to be pretty soggy. The southeast is looking to be dry as well. Might be coming in on some severe weather, especially in the Tennessee Valley. And it's looking like this could be the case as we head into May and possibly in June. And as we take a look at the seasonal precipitation outlook from March all the way into May, we can see, of course, the southwest and a little bit of the central part of the country here going to be in a below average precipitation pattern, as well as down by Florida. And it's looking like the Midwest and Northwest is going to be in a above average precipitation pattern. So it's looking like could be a little bit wet and cool up here in the Northwest and a little bit of the Midwest as well, while the Southwest and much of the country really is going to be heading into a warmer than normal and a little bit drier than normal spring weather pattern. Now, here's my thoughts on how this spring will go. I know this is my thumbnail from the video, but this is what I'm thinking. Wet and cool up here in the northwest, warming up slowly, very soggy amongst the Midwest, and of course, could be coming in on some late season snow up here in the northeast as well, because we're going to be a little bit wet and cooler than normal. And here in the southwest, we're going to be warming up drastically and could be coming in on some drought-like conditions. Of course, the southeast will be coming in on an uptick in some severe weather this season potentially. Now, the reason why I think it's going to be a significant severe weather season, especially down there in the deep south and Tennessee Valley, is because although this is saying that we're going to be expecting a little bit below average severe weather this year, I'm thinking it's going to be a little bit above average. I'm not fear-mongering because we're going to be heading out of La Nina, which is what we saw last spring, which brought on significant severe weather, especially in the Central Plains. But of course, Central Plains is looking to be a little bit drier than normal this year, so I'm not expecting much severe weather up there, although this is subject to change, so keep that in mind as well. But we can see that expecting a little bit below normal, and we already saw severe weather in the deep south this year, so we could be coming in on significant severe weather. Retimers mentioned this as well. Go check him out. And as you can see here, here's a breakdown of it. El Nino means below average severe weather due to reduced activity due to a weaker jet stream. La Nina, just like we were in last year, above average because of the volatility in the jet stream, especially in the Ohio Valley deep south, and a little bit of the central part of the country too, because Iowa and Oklahoma got in on significant severe weather last year. Neutral means about average to slightly below. So basically what I'm saying is about average is what I would expect. So just prepare for severe weather season by making sure you have a safety action plan put in place. Of course, know the difference between tornado warning and tornado watch. And if you're under tornado warning, this is what you do during a tornado warning. And so it's best to hope for the best and prepare for the worst than to not prepare, because even though it says below average, could still get in on that significant severe weather season. So now that I covered the forecast, what we could expect this spring, remember to push those clocks forward on March 9th. Unfortunately, they haven't passed the bill yet to leave the clocks alone, although Oklahoma still has a bill. I don't know if they passed it yet. Something about storm chasing and having a license for it. Hopefully that gets turned down, and hopefully they pass a bill to get rid of time change. And here is some context about time change. Daylight savings time, of course, spring forward. We all know this. But a fun fact about it is the idea was pitched by Ben Franklin in 1784 as a joke to save candles, but it wasn't taken seriously until much later. Folklore includes myths like daylight savings time causing chaos for farmers or being a wartime conspiracy, although it's really about energy and convenience, which we don't really need time change anymore. And Ben Franklin jokingly suggested daylight savings time in 1784 to save candle wax, proposing Parisians wake up earlier with church bells and cannons in a satirical letter. He calculated massive candle savings but didn't expect it to stick. It wasn't until World War I, over a century later, that Germany adopted daylight savings time in 1916 to conserve coal, sparking its modern use. And of course, on March 9th at 2 o'clock in the morning, our clocks jumped to 3 o'clock in the morning, unfortunately. I myself like fall back, but I do spring forward, but both screw me up in the same kind of manner. Now, some folklore about it is farmer frenzy myth. A common tale claims daylight savings time was despised by farmers because it messed up their schedules, like cows refusing to milk an hour early. Truth is, farmers adapted fine. The idea grew from urban energy-saving goals, not rural woes. Wartime conspiracy. Some lore ties daylight savings time to shadowy wartime plots, suggesting it was a trick to confuse enemies or boost factory output. While wars polarized it, World War I and II, it was more about practical fuel saving than espionage. Last hour curse. Folklore warns the lost hour when we spring forward brings bad luck, like missing appointments or grumpy moods. People joke it's the universe stealing sleep, though it's a clock tweak. Now, the last tidbit about daylight savings time is, in Franklin's spoof, he suggests taxing shutters to force early rising. Imagine cannon blasts waking you up on March 9th. That's a crazy thing to think about that they did back then. They used to just shoot cannons and wake people up rudely, kind of like Full Metal Jacket. Private Pile having his jelly donut, having to do push-ups because he had a jelly donut while he eats the jelly donut. Basically like that. Now, some spring severe weather stats, since severe weather season is coming up, and we did have some severe weather not too long ago in Mississippi. Now, tornado activity. Spring spanning from March into May is a peak period for tornadoes, of course, with an average of 719 tornadoes reported annually. This high number reflects the season's volatility, driven by the clash of warm air and cold air, particularly in the tornado alley states like Texas and Kansas. And here's some more stats. Tornadoes, of course, are a hallmark of severe weather. See a 3-year average within 3 months. March typically sees 166 tornadoes, while April sees 241, with the most being seen in May, which is 312. And this is all due to the warm air coming up from the Gulf of America, clashing with the cold air, and of course we get the spinneroonies, and of course tornadoes happen. And here's how you can prepare for tornadoes. Basically, get into your shelter, whether that's basement, closet, interior room. Just keep many walls between you and the outside world as possible, basically what I'm saying. And make sure you bring all this stuff with you as well. As far as thunderstorms go, this includes large hail, strong tornadoes, and high winds. Estimated 10,000 per year across the United States, with approximately 6,000 occurring during spring. Now, here's some severe thunderstorm analysis. Severe thunderstorm is defined by the National Weather Service as storms producing hail at least an inch in diameter and wind gusts of about 58 mile an hour or greater, or even tornadoes, are more frequent than tornadoes alone, of course. Estimates suggesting that there are about 100,000 thunderstorms annually in the U.S., with approximately 10% reaching severe levels, equating to 10,000 thunderstorms per year. Given the seasonal distribution and assuming a similar pattern to tornadoes, with spring being, of course, the peak period, an estimated 6,000 severe thunderstorms occur during spring. This estimate is derived from the proportion of tornado activity in spring, about 60%, applied to the severe thunderstorm total, acknowledging that severe thunderstorms can include multiple hazards, hail, winds, and some tornadoes in most cases, may lead to multiple warnings per event. So basically, we see about 100,000 thunderstorms here in the United States on average, 10,000 in the severe category, with 6,000 of those being during springtime. Now, as far as flooding goes in spring is a season prone to flooding, of course, due to snowmelt and heavy rainfall, especially in regions with significant snowpack. While specific annual averages for flood events are not easily accessible, the potential for flooding increases, impacting communities and infrastructure, particularly in the Midwest and Northeast. And those people in North Carolina are finally getting the help they need, unlike the past administration. Now, flooding trends. Flooding is a significant severe weather concern, of course, during spring, driven by snowmelt, just like I mentioned earlier. And this basically goes over the previous slide, basically saying that flooding affects millions of people and causes a lot of damage, and this is why insurance is high in most cases. Now, there is snow that occurs in springtime still in parts of the country, mainly in the northern part of the country. Still occurs from March and April. Specific average numbers of snowstorms in spring are not provided. Sources like AccuWeather and the Weather Channel note that March and April are the snowiest months in areas like the Rockies and the High Plains. For example, Denver sees its snowiest month in March, with historical data showing impactful snowstorms such as the 1993 Superstorm. National Weather Service climate summaries for specific locations like La Crosse, Wisconsin, indicate measurable snow days in spring, with events like April 16th in 2023 recording up to 17.3 inches in West Salem, highlighting the potential for significant spring events in the northern regions. So, snow can happen, unfortunately, y'all, and that groundhog predicted 6 more weeks of winter, and according to my thumbnail and on the Climate Protection Center data, it's looking like we're going to be heading into a late spring, especially in the northwest and parts of the Midwest and Northeast as well. And here is the average last freeze. We can see northern half of the country into the Northeast. Late April and early May is when you typically see your last frost. Now, according to Randy Allis, he said that May 17th, somewhere around there, the middle of May, is typically when we see our last frost here in Indiana. Typically when we get to plant here. Of course, the Northwest and the Rockies, typically June and July is when y'all get your last frost. So, spring's right around the corner, y'all. Now, shifting gears to some spring facts and some folklore. Cherry blossom bonanza. A single cherry tree can sprout up to 1,500 flowers, turning it into a pink and white spectacle. Nature's way of saying spring has arrived with a bang. Equinox bounce. The vernal equinox on March 20th is one of the only 2 days when the sun rises due east and sets due west everywhere on Earth, giving us nearly equal day and night, perfect harmony for about 12 hours. Birds beat the clock. Migratory birds like swallows and monarch butterflies are arriving earlier than they did decades ago, sometimes by weeks, thanks to warmer springs shifting their internal calendars. Now, speaking of birds, as we head into springtime, I will put up a bird migration map like I did during fall time. So look forward to that. Earth's tilt trick. Spring happens because Earth tilts to 23.5 degrees. Northern hemisphere tilts towards the sun, boosting sunlight and warmth. It's not closer, but just better aimed. Rain's secret weapons. Showers often smell fresh because of geosmin, a compound released by soil bacteria when rain hits dry ground. Nature's own perfume. So that's why you smell rain. It's because of the soil's bacteria. And here's the meaning behind April Fools, dedicated to playing harmless pranks and spreading hoaxes. Of course, the origins of it date back to the 16th century in France in 1564, when the country switched from Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar under King Charles. The new year shifted from late March into April, around the spring equinox, to January 1st. Some people either resisted the change or didn't get the memo and continued celebrating the new year and spring. These folks were mocked as April Fools, and the tradition of pranks allegedly grew from there. So basically it dates back to the 1500s because they switched the calendar around. Now it evolved, of course, into a global custom by the 19th century, as it was well established in Europe and North America, with pranks ranging from fake news stories like the spaghetti tree hoax to simple gags like sticking a kick me sign on someone's back. So I'll be doing an April Fool's joke this year. Probably not like I did last year. I want to change it up for y'all, but I'm going to do something. So make sure you stay tuned for that. Now some folklore. Persephone's return, which is Greek. Spring begins when Persephone, goddess of vegetation, emerges from the underworld. Her mother, Demeter, goddess of the harvest, celebrates by reviving the earth with flowers and greenery, a mythic reboot of nature. Flora's bloom, which is Roman. Flora, the goddess of flowers and spring, dances across the land, scattering blossoms. Romans honored her with the Floria festival in late April, a week of revelry to ensure a bountiful season. Easter symbols, which is Christian and pagan, tied to the vernal equinox. Easter blends rebirth themes with eggs and rabbits, ancient fertility symbols from pagan spring rites, like those of the goddess Easter. So basically, Easter symbolizes rebirth, essentially, is what Easter is all about. May Day magic, which is Celtic and European. On May 1st, May Day celebrates spring's peak with maples and bonfires, rooted in the Celtic festival Beltane. Said dancing around the pole ensures fertility and wards off evil spirits, so maybe that's why strip clubs are a thing, because of May Day magic. So unfortunately nobody can go to Hooters anymore or Twin Peaks, but they can go to some strip clubs and celebrate May Day magic on May 1st, so make sure you go celebrate that. Now, Cuckoo's Call, which is British. Hearing the first cuckoo's song marks spring's true arrival. Folklore claims carrying a cuckoo, feather, or coin when you hear it brings good luck all year. Listen closely this March. Dew and rain rituals in the Appalachian Mountains. Washing your face in May 1st dew is said to make you beautiful, while getting wet in the first May rain prevents headaches for years. Simple charms from nature's bounty. Jarilo's Ride, which is Slavic. Jarilo, a youthful god of spring and fertility, gallops on a white horse, awakening the land. Some Slavic tales say his footsteps sprout the first green shoots of the season. Now, some spring astronomical events. Now, I did go down a rabbit hole of outer space and the Voyager missions and all that. So, here's some interesting facts I found about astronomical events that's going to be occurring this spring. Now, these are some reoccurring astronomical events, the vernal equinox on the first day of spring, which spring begins at 8:01 p.m. when the sun crosses the celestial equator, balancing day and night. The sun rises due east and sets due west. Globally, rare alignment due to Earth's tilt, which I didn't mention that earlier. Lengthening days. The northern hemisphere's tilt towards the sun increases daylight, peaking at over 14 hours by June. Perfect for stargazing or launch watching. Spring constellations. Leo, Virgo, and Boots. Light up the night sky. Spot Regulus in Leo or Spica in Virgo as spring starry heralds. Basically, those are the constellations we're going to be seeing this spring, and really every spring. Meteor showers. Lyrids, April 21st and 22nd, peaking April 22nd. Expect 10 to 20 meteors per hour from Comet Thatcher's debris in Lyra. Best after midnight, moon permitting. Eta Aquarids. I'm sorry guys, these are difficult words. But May 5th and 9th, peaking May 6th, see 10 to 30 meteors per hour from Halley's Comet, radiating from Aquarius. Southern viewers might catch up to 60, so there's some reoccurring spring astronomical events. Here's specific events to just this year. The worm moon is going to be seen on March 28th, named for earthworms signaling thawed soil. It's a bright beacon in late March. Pink moon on April 27th, inspired by blooming phlox. This golden moon glows without a hint of pink. Flower moon on May 26th, marking spring's floral peak. It's a fitting tale to the season's lunar trio. Planetary dance. Venus and Jupiter in early April. Venus, the evening star, pairs with Jupiter in the west at dusk. A dazzling duo for the naked eye viewing. Saturn in May, rising pre-dawn in Aquarius. Saturn's rings gleam through a binocular or a small scope. Solar cycle 25's peak. It's going to be near its maximum in the middle of this year. Heightened solar activity could mean be seeing the auroras this year. Now here's some SpaceX and NASA missions that's going to be going on during spring of this year. SpaceX Crew 10, it's going to be occurring late February into early March. Launching no earlier than late February from the Kennedy Space Center, this SpaceX Falcon 9 mission sends 4 astronauts to the ISS for a 6-month stay. They'll conduct research vital for deep space missions. Returning in August of this year, this overlaps spring start, kicking off the season's spaceflight. Now during spring of 2025, Axiom Mission 4, SpaceX launches this private mission for Axiom Space from Florida, no earlier than spring, led by ex-NASA astronaut Peggy Whitson. The crew, including astronauts from India, Poland, and Hungary, will head to the ISS for science and tech demos boosting space efforts. The Firefly Blue Ghost Mission 1, launching on March 2nd, launched January 15th on a SpaceX Falcon 9. This lunar lander delivers 10 NASA payloads to Mare Crisium by early March. It'll study lunar geology, part of NASA's Artemis prep for human landings. So basically, they're going to be exploring Mars, essentially. Sphere X launched going to be late February on February 27th at 10:10. A SpaceX Falcon 9 lifts off NASA's Sphere X observatory. This car-sized telescope will map the sky in 3D, cataloging stars and galaxies to unravel cosmic history. Spring's first big science mission. Artemis II prep, no launch this spring, slated for next year in April, but NASA ramps up testing. The Orion spacecraft and SLS rocket components are being integrated at the Kennedy Space Center, paving the way for the first crewed lunar orbit since Apollo. Now here's the Voyagers that I was talking about earlier. Voyager 1, which is now 14.6 billion miles away, it's back in action after a glitch halted science data in November of 2023. All 4 instruments studying plasma waves, magnetic fields, and particles resumed by June of last year. Engineers expect data until around 2025. When power dwindles, spring might be its last full season, unfortunately, of travel. Voyager 2 is at 12.3 billion miles away. It's humming along with 5 instruments, tapping backup power since 2023 to extend operations. It'll start shutting down instruments in 2026, but this year could still yield data to the heliosphere edge. Both could send engines nearing signals into the 2030s if power holds. So basically, Voyager 1 is going to be pretty much dying soon, and Voyager 2 is not far behind it. Went out pretty far, although if Voyager 1 miraculously holds on, we could be studying Oort's cloud, or the Oort cloud. Hopefully it does it, but we won't know anything for the next, let's say, 20,000 to 100,000 years, so we won't know what the edge of the solar system is going to look like, unfortunately, unless we have light speed technology. So I found that to be fascinating. Went down a wormhole of astronomical events and the Voyagers that were out there. Now keep in mind, these Voyagers have been up there since the 1970s, so it's pretty miraculous that they're still out there in outer space, and they went out so far. That was something I found to be pretty fascinating. Now, some significant weather events during spring include late March 1987, which a blizzard struck western Kansas and brought heavy snow and strong winds, with Dodge City reporting up to 44 consecutive hours of blizzard conditions. Now in April, the 74 super outbreak saw 148 tornadoes across the U.S., killing 319 people, making it one of the deadliest tornado events in history. Now I know there was the April 2011 event in Tuscaloosa. Didn't forget that one, but I'll put up the graphic here of that event. Now in May 1999, Oklahoma City tornado had an F5 tornado, caused extensive damage and loss of life, part of a broader outbreak affecting multiple states. Early June 1953, Flint Beecher tornado, which was an F5, struck Michigan, resulting in 116 deaths and over 840 injuries, one of the deadliest in U.S. history. The 1999 event, now I think this is when Reed Timmer caught his first tornado. I think he almost got sucked up in it. So these are some of the most recent events. Now here's some springtime war weather history. Weather has shaped military outcomes, from snowstorms aiding surprise attacks to storms delaying invasions. Each month segment reveals how weather influenced wartime operations from the Korean War to World War II. Now this is a month-by-month basis, but in late March of 1951, a snowstorm occurred during the Korean War, disrupting supply lines and troop movements, adding to the challenges faced by soldiers. Now during April, World War I, the Battle of Vimy Ridge on April 9th of 1917 benefited from a snowstorm that provided cover for Canadian troops, aiding their success. In May, the Battle of Arras in 1917 saw rain and mud affecting troop movements, complicating this major British offensive during World War I. In June, D-Day on June 6th of 1944 was delayed due to bad weather, with the invasion proceeding when conditions improved critical movement in World War II. Those are some significant weather events during springtime weather history. So, hopefully y'all enjoyed today's video. I know it was a long video, I'm sorry about that, but a lot of information. So I hope y'all enjoyed it. If you did, hit that like and share button so more folks are informed about the weather. Also, leave me some feedback in the comment section down below, as feedback helps provide you, the viewer, better and more informative content in the future. Also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below with bell notifications turned on, because here wins weather we try to make weather forecasting fun and informative. Also, our Rumble channel, if you want to check that out, it's Williams WX98. Greatly appreciate it if y'all go check that out as well. So basically, we're going to be heading into an INSO neutral pattern as we head into springtime, which means the southwest and into the central plains could be coming in on a drastic warm-up with some very dry conditions, while the rest of the country is looking to come in on some wet and potentially some cool conditions, so look out for that. The severe weather season could be a big one. Now, I'm trying not to fearmonger, but I'm thinking it's going to be a little bit above average, because we're going to be heading out of La Nina and into more of the neutral pattern, which means we could be seeing a severe weather season like we did last year. Could be wrong on this, but it's best to prepare for the worst and hope for the best, than to hope for the best and the worst happens and it's just, you're out of luck, basically. So just prepare for the worst is what I'm saying. So again, have a nice spring, y'all. It's looking like it's going to be a late spring for most, unfortunately. That groundhog is correct. That's unfortunate. Again, like, comment, subscribe. Appreciate all y'all for watching. And until next time, never stop forecasting.